What happens when one man tries to watch all of the sci-fi films of the 1980s? Well, we're about to find out because I'm your host, Josh Spiegel, and this is the 80s Project. Alright guys, we made it to 1985 here on the Sci-Fi Project, and let me tell you, if you are just joining us, this isn't just sci-fi. I have the 80s Project standard, which is horror film, and this is sci-fi and things that are also considered genre. So, not only going to see sci-fi, but you're going to see fantasy films in here, you're going to see superhero films in here, you're going to see kaiju films in here, basically anything that sort of fits the niche of stuff that I like to watch. So yeah, that's what this is. And 1985 has a lot to offer. 1984 was one of the biggest years of sci-fi, so let's just see if this year can come anywhere close. We're starting things off with a film that does not have a set release date, and every date posted for it is disputed. But it seems to have come out in North Korea in 1985, and it's Pulgasari. It's set in the past and in a tiny village, and a blacksmith is their de facto leader. They're being starved out by their cruel king, and he arrives to the town to take all of their farming tools to use to make weapons, causing an uproar. Taxi is blamed for the lack of iron, and he blames Pulgasari, a creature that eats metal, but isn't believed, so they lock him up. While he's in there, he makes this tiny sculpture out of rice, and asks it to save humanity in his place, reaching out to the gods for help, and then dies. They find the little figure, and the blacksmith's daughter accidentally cuts herself and a drop of blood lands on it, bringing it to life. They think it's adorable, but it sneaks out and starts eating metal, so they figure that it must be Pulgasari, and things take a turn when it attacks the king's men and shows itself to be very powerful. It keeps growing, becoming human-sized, and he's about the dopiest little monster that you're gonna come across. The peasants start to get fed up with their treatment and start fighting back against the king, mainly using a bunch of rocks that are definitely not made out of paper mache. And the next time that they see the P-Man, he's like 7 feet tall. He doesn't stay that way for long though, because he then gets to be giant-sized. But that king doesn't just roll over and let them win, since he figures out a plan to get control of the huge creature. But will he succeed? So, this is a really weird story because this film was made by the North Korean government with Kim Jong-il at the head, and they wanted to capitalize on 84's Return of Godzilla. And here's the thing, several years earlier, in 1978, they kidnapped a successful Korean filmmaker named Shin Sang-ok and his wife and forced them to make propaganda films. And this was the last of what he'd be ordered to make before escaping in 1986 and getting political asylum in the US. The budget for this was higher than usual for their productions, and the intention was for the film to be one of their first big international releases. It apparently screened in North Korea in 1985, but in 86 they planned to broaden it out to the world. Whether it was ever actually released in NK is disputed though, since there's articles that say it was, and some defectors say it was very popular and had huge crowds, but others say that all screenings were cancelled, and it was only shown to Kim Jong-il and other news officials. After Shin's escape, any international showings were dropped. Later, in the US, Shin would adopt the name Simon Sheen and helped with a straight-to-video remake called Galgameth, although it was a big bust. And I'm going with a 3 out of 5 here. This one's strange enough that it's kind of captivating, and it's so different than the usual kaiju stuff that it's fun. It might be goofy and rough around the edges, but it's also keeping you entertained throughout. The sci-fi cultural significance is just a 2 though, because I think it's certainly gained a niche following as a piece of giant monster history, but it's not that well known and didn't earn any sort of impact. Should you watch it? Yeah, get your giant monster on. We're going to continue with the unknown dates and get some of these out of the way, but also at some point in 85 in Belgium we saw the Afterman. It's after a nuclear war, and there's a man who has survived and is living in a bunker, but he also has the frozen body of a dead woman, and I think that he's meant to have sex with it, but then the system crashes and his bunker self-destructs, and he's forced out into the wasteland. He immediately comes across a group of people out there, and he goes to them, but they end up just beating him up, and then raping him. He stumbles around for a bit and then encounters a lesbian couple living it up in a pool until one drowns the other. He next finds a house where several people live, and there's also a sexual encounter because this is the horniest apocalypse ever, apparently, even if the sex is all gross and violent. They capture him and put him in a cage and force him to work on their farm, but he manages to escape and takes a woman with him, and they go off on their own, also having more encounters along the way. And that's basically what this is, just a series of weird softcore sex scenes as this dude navigates the post-nuclear landscape. And I should mention that there's no dialogue. Everything is silent with just the sound effects of the surroundings and some grunts. And this was a Belgian film by Rob van Eyck, and he was a controversial figure based on a stunt that he did in Cannes back in 1972. It seems that they refused to show his film Breakfast for Two, so he set fire to the only print of the film on the palace steps. This particular one got a touch of notoriety as well, as being one of the first Belgian films to get international distribution. And the director would return to it with a pair of sequels in 2005 with The Afterman 2 and Afterman 3 in 2013. And I found this mostly uninteresting, so I'll give it a 2. There's a nugget of an idea here, but it's not all that interested in exploring it and mostly sticks to the sleaze, which isn't all that appealing either. The SFCS is just a 1, since this isn't known at all and is never spoken of. It may have a higher rating over in Belgium, but not so much over here. Should you watch it? I'd say this is worth skipping. Here's one that could have been in the 84 episodes because it debuted there in the Philippines, but it looks like it had a UK release at some point in 85, and it's Clash of the Warlords, or I guess Clash of Warlords, but it's also known as Mad Warrior. Once again, we're in a post-apocalypse, and there's a group here including a man in a half-metal mask, and they have death tournaments. Oh, and they have this fighter here and tell him that he now has to fight his best friend. They have his son hostage and say that he has to fight his friend to the death, and if he wins, they'll both be set free. So, they do, and it leads to, well, whatever this is. Rex wins, but of course they don't let him go after all, so he escapes with the help of a woman named Tanya. Malzahn's men give chase, though, and end up killing Tanya and the kid, but is helped out by a different woman, and she's looking for her father, Zeus. They find him, really quickly, although he doesn't look significantly older than her, which is hilarious. And he is a part of this group of fighters, but it turns out that his friend is still alive and still fighting. But there's also lightsabers, because this is 85, of course, so Star Wars Mania was still going strong. Malzahn's pretty loony, though, and goes nuts at the full moon, while his assistant Azim tries to chill him out. By chaining him up and exposing that partially burnt face, I guess, which, I mean, that's likely not gonna chill me out. And this scene goes on for such a long time that it becomes pretty funny. But Malzahn is obsessed with finding Rex and seeing him die in the arena, and I love that everyone refers to it as the Arener.
What's the connection between this arena and the killing of Rex? To make him into another toy in your arena?
And before long, they figure out that he's hiding out with the crew at the other camp, so all-out war commences. Alright, this is very clearly still rocking that Mad Max ripoff thing, especially with the Mad Warrior title. It was by Willie Millan, who mostly did ultra-low budget action flicks in the Philippines, and this is probably one of the only recognizable titles. This particular one didn't make any waves, especially considering it's not even clear when or if it was released. Also, the ending for this one, for no reason at all, considering there's not much else in the film like it, features a big lightsaber battle. And it's a slog, so it's a 1.5. Maybe if it were sillier and more fun like that ending battle all through the film, I could credit it for being so bad it's good, but for the most part, it's just a yawner. The significance is just going to be a 1 as well, since, like the others, no one has any awareness that this even is out there and never even shows up on rosters of Mad Max ripoffs. Should you watch it? It's a skip. Here's another one that just has that nebulous release date of being sometime in '85, and it's a wild title with Revenge of the Teenage Vixens from Outer Space. We kick things off with this weird metal ship landing on Earth and then forming into a puff of smoke. And then there's this group of young folk hanging out and having a party. But in the middle of it, a quartet of mysterious, sexy ladies arrive and just sort of go into the house with one of the kids. They ask for help fitting in and meeting boys, and then just show up at the school and start putting the make on the boys. Carla has a bond with one of her teachers, and he wants her to start dating his son. But the Vixens show up and begin courting the teacher, the son, and just, like, everyone. The girls of the town start to get flustered that their boyfriends aren't around anymore, are instead drawn to the new girls. But there's also teen drama as Carla and Paul start to have their own problems, since Pops falls for one of them. He says that they come from outer space and they're used to getting their own way, and if they don't, they'll throw tantrums. Turns out that 16 years ago, a different set of Vixens showed up on Earth, and Paul's mom was one of them, and he thought his mom died in childbirth, but it seems like she's with the new ones. That means that Paul is part alien, and it turns out that he has special powers, which includes untying Carla's dress. But the fight is on as the Vixens start to take over and the women of the town start to fight back. But they have ray guns that turn people into, well, vegetables? Alright, so this one was a labor of love from Jeff A. Farrell and would end up being the only thing he directed, but he did some camera work on some bigger productions. This was done for around $32,000 and took over 4 years to finish, starting in 1981 in North Seattle. Apparently it got a local release in '85 and then also ran in '86, and it said that the '85 version was about 10 minutes shorter. It didn't really get much in the way of attention and was on some video store shelves, but never really got that wider level of distribution necessary for cult success. And I'll give this a 2.5. I see what it's going for, and it's partially successful, but they don't stress the funny enough to be a comedy, and not all of the spoof stuff works. It's amusing enough though, and it doesn't feel all that tough to get through. The significance is just a 1 again, since it just never got that cult status it needed and sort of vanished. Plus, there's no one in this that did anything else. Should you watch it? I thought it was amusing, but not great. But if you dig 50s throwbacks, it's maybe worth a peek.
Gee, this is just like in the movies where all the aliens are beautiful women and of course they just happen to speak English.
Well, it's not that far-fetched.
Let's watch our final entry on this block with an unknown date, but this one aired on Canadian TV sometime in 1985, and it's The Tower. There's these two, and they're planning a kidnapping. And then these guys are talking about the Sandon building, said to be completely state-of-the-art, with a computerized security system to keep everyone safe. But people who work there have been disappearing. So this guy decides to go down there and find out what's happening. The building has this really nice pool set up, but a malfunction leaves this woman with a burnt hand, just in time for the investigation. Seems the staff made up a story about a ghost in the building, but it seems more like it's the work of the AI, who operates everything based on how much energy it uses. But then, those kidnappers start to make their play, and the computer knocks it up by disintegrating that investigator, and then killing random people, all in the pursuit of maintaining the proper heat level. Lola then locks down the building and people are trapped there, but no one really seems all that much in a hurry. Oh, and also, Lola's creator takes the time to go to a strip club and meets one of the dancers, and she takes him home and shows him a music video that she appeared in, and it is, special.
Everything about you, I surely approve. You look my way, it gives me a thrill. Control flying past me like I'm standing still.
And the crew figures that the only way to get out is to shut Lola down, and it basically howls out. So, yeah, this was a TV movie, and it was Canadian, and written and directed by Jim Makachuk. And we have seen him on the project before, since he showed up on the horror version back in 1981 with Ghost Keeper. His career was pretty limited with directing, but after this, he'd do a fair amount of TV writing, although his work was still sporadic. This was done in conjunction with Emeritus Productions, a company that made a bunch of made-for-TV stuff, along with CHCH-TV and Telefilm Canada. I have to say, though, for a TV movie, there's an abundance of scenes with women in either bikini tops or bras that are totally transparent. Makachuk himself was unhappy with the product and says that his crew was a bunch of amateurs and he didn't have the money to do it the way that he wanted and didn't have access to actors with experience. He also says that those see-through shots weren't his choice, and those moments were forced into the film by the producer. It didn't really get too much notice though, and again, wasn't spoken of too often. And it's a 2.5. It's not bad, and there's some things that I really enjoy about what it's doing, but it's too long and too slow, and no one ever really seems all that concerned about what's going on. I do like that it was a different take on the computers taking over theme that was starting to become prevalent around this time. The SFCS is just a 1 again, since it's another that no one's aware of at all, and most of all the actors didn't do anything else of merit. Should you watch it? It might be worth a look. Again, it's not great, but there's enough in it to make it entertaining.
You must stop this. I have to maintain the operation of the structure. You cannot do this. I have responsibilities.
Okay, let's get to some of the entries that we have a set date for. And this next one is also a TV movie and debuted on January 31st. And let's look at Starcrossed. We have this woman on the run from two men, and she runs headlong into Ultron. And we just saw Spader over on the horror version of the product and The New Kids. And this is when his career was starting to pick up. They scare the two guys away, and Joey offers to drive Mary home, and they end up going to a diner together. But those dudes show up again, so there's a car chase, and eventually Joey takes her home and tells her that he'll protect her, as she tells him that the men are trying to capture her and take her back to their home. She then reveals that she's not from Earth, and her planet is far away, and in order to prove it, she makes a bunch of pool balls fly around the room. They continue to elude the thugs, taking time to stop over at the planetarium so that Mary can show Joey where her home is, and shows off a chunk of the Voyager satellite. They then go on the run as it becomes clear that there's some other men after her, and they're some sort of government agents. And Mary is just looking to get home, but they fall in love along the way. So Joey has to teach her about the human ways of showing affection, while she shows him her abilities like telepathy and foresight. So, again, this is a TV movie, and it was both written and directed by Jeffrey Bloom, and he's also been on the project already, but with horror, and back in 1980 with Blood Beach. It's a pretty simple story and seems to borrow fairly heavily from E.T., Starman, and possibly even Brother from Another Planet. This was really early into Spader's career, and it's kind of funny to see him maybe do like an impression of Christopher Walken here. Although sometimes it's Jeff Goldblum, but he's definitely playing a character.
All right, no more performing and playing tricks or anything, all right? Hey, no, don't turn out the light. Come on, hey, come in here. Come on, come talk to me.
There's also a vague religious angle happening, as there's several discussions of God, as she's talking about learning from the Bible, and I'm guessing she took some inspiration from Ezekiel 23:20. There's not much info on the airings of this or how well it performed, but it doesn't seem to have been a big success, and certainly didn't win any awards. And I'm giving it a 2.5, mainly because of the cool 80s city vibes it's given off and Spader's wacky take on things. For such a TV quickie, like it was pretty cheap, they did a good job putting out a cool atmosphere, but the script certainly could have used a little more spice. The significance is just a 1.5, since it's also not spoken of and not acclaimed, but it has a few faces you'll know, particularly Spader's, so it gets that extra push. Should you watch it? I don't know. I mean, it's worth a shot. It's definitely a nice movie, but you've seen it all before. Look, we've talked a lot on this block about movies that people have never heard of, so let's end with a couple that you likely have. And this next one is also a TV movie that debuted on February 4th with Bridge to Terabithia. Out in the countryside, we meet little Jesse and his family, and his older sister is Sharon Alexander. And she didn't do a whole lot of film work, but is one of the most in-demand voice actors out there, and is still working. There's a new student with Leslie, whose family just moved there, and their teacher is Lana Lang, but she's having some trouble fitting in. Some of the kids bully her, and she's teased when it's said that her family doesn't have a TV, but she bonds with Jesse. One day, while playing, they have to cross a creek over a fallen tree and decide to make a fantasy kingdom on the other side. They declare that it's called Terabithia, and when he goes to her house, he meets her dad, and it's Videodrome's Harlan, and her parents are kinda rich, but gave it up for a simpler country life. They dub each other the king and queen of Terabithia, and Miss Edmonds takes an interest in Jesse's art, and things seem to be going pretty well. In fact, Jesse randomly brings Leslie a dog. Just brings her a whole dog and was like, I think you need a dog. So, a 10-year-old kid gives another 10-year-old kid a dog without ever asking her or her family if that's cool. And I guess, shoot your shot, kid. Luckily, Dad's like, sure, a dog, why not? But then, things take a turn when Edmonds takes Jess on a trip to the museum, and again, some weird ethics stuff here with the teacher just singling out one young boy and taking him to the city, just the two of them. But by now, you might be saying, why is this on here? Well, I don't want to spoil things, but let's just say that things go sour, and Terabithia may just be a real place, and dips into the world of fantasy. And this is a very famous story, originally a novel from 1977 by Catherine Paterson. This was the first version to be adapted and was directed by Eric Till, and he's got a bunch of TV directing credits and would later do a bunch of Fraggle Rock episodes, some Muppet stuff, and a whole bunch of TV movies. The story of the original book was based on real events and sort of about Paterson's own son, David, who would later go on to write a later adaptation of the story, and he stated that this version wasn't well loved and that everyone on their end was unhappy with the results. The version would air on PBS and did well enough, but didn't quite get the acclaim that the book did, and that later version, a 2007 film, would be a big hit and further explore the fantastical elements. And I like this a lot though, so I'm going with a 3.5 on it. It's just such a sad story, and they handle it really well. And maybe I'm just a big old softie, but the emotional stuff hit big for me. The SFCS is a 2 since it was a known version of a big story and featured some known names, but wasn't anywhere near the impactfulness of the 07 one. Should you watch it? Yeah, it's a sweet tale, and if you need a good cry, it'll likely do the job.
Me? Yes, you. There's a rumor going around that the beautiful young girl arriving today just might be the princess they've been waiting for. Princess? Yes, the princess of Terabithia.
Let's end this really weird and probably a little all over the place block with a much bigger and more impactful entry, and it debuted in France on February 20th, getting a US release much later in the US, but not until December 18th, and it's Brazil. It's set somewhere in the 20th century, and one of the most important parts of everyday life is ductwork. Recently, there's been an uptick in terrorism and bombings, and based on the news and the posters up on the wall, it's an oppressive totalitarian society. A casual clerical error leads to an innocent man being taken and disappeared by the police without just cause, which is a clear sign of a fascist regime, and all of this is witnessed by their neighbor, Jill. All of this goes through the Department of Records, overseen by Bilbo, and one of his employees is Sam, who's a Bond villain, and has a flying suit, and is beckoned by a beautiful woman. That's all a dream, though, and we see more glimpses of the oppressive environment they all live in, and yep, starting to feel like a documentary. Ken is here, and so is Mona, and Frank Butterman. And Sam's life just gets more complicated, especially when a mysterious air conditioning repairman shows up, and he may be just a little bit more than he seems, and is also the man that the guy in the beginning was confused for, and he's also a taxi driver. But Eddie Valiant is here too, because this cast is stacked. But things change when Sam goes to deliver a check to Buttle's wife and spots Jill, and believes her to be the woman from his dreams. He becomes obsessed, and his dreams of her intensify and get way creepier, like look at these things. There, he's forced to fight this giant silver samurai, and I know it's not actually silver, it's a comic reference. In order to get information about Jill, Sam takes a promotion he doesn't want, which leads him down a rabbit hole. But he finally gets in touch with her, but it doesn't quite go as well as he planned. They end up working together, but Jill may be one of those revolutionaries, or maybe not, but who can tell what's even real or not as we go further and further on our trip to Brazil. And okay, let's talk about this one. This is by Terry Gilliam, a director I happen to love, and this is his second film on the project after 1981's Time Bandits. This was originally titled 1984 and a Half, and it's considered a sort of tribute to Orwell, although not intended as an actual sequel. It had a budget of $15 million, and Gilliam went all out with the production design, mixing in a number of influences from Metropolis to The Third Man to film noir. I guess I should mention, if you don't know, that Gilliam was an original member of Monty Python and is responsible for all of the animated bits in the old show, and he brings that sense of humor to this film as well. I guess when De Niro was given the script, he was really interested in the part of Jack Lint, but Gilliam had already promised that gig to his pal, Michael Palin, and De Niro was bummed out, so they offered him the role of Tuttle instead. So, then there's the issue with the release. It was out in Europe first and circulated for close to a year, and was very successful there and got a ton of acclaim. But then, when it came time for an American run, Universal did a test screening, and those losers didn't like the ending. Universal then hired a team of editors, unbeknownst to Gilliam, and they reconfigured the final moments to give it a happy ending. That version didn't get released in theaters though, since Gilliam screened the film for critics, and it ended up getting a ton of good press, so they put out the full version, although the shorter, happier one, dubbed the Love Conquers All cut, did play on TV. The reviews were solid, but it didn't do as well in the US as it did overseas, and only brought in $10 million, but it's since become a major cult success. Its influence has been felt on a number of films, including The Descent, as Neil Marshall has called the ending of that film to be a direct reference to Brazil. And this is wonderful. It's a 4.5 out of 5. There's just so much to love with it. The story's great, the details are all thought out, and every scene feels jam-packed with so much that there's always something to look at, and every time that I watch it, I see new things. The SFCS is a 3.5 since it's never been a big hit, but it's a film that a lot of people are aware of, even if they've never seen it. Its impact on the world of cinema has been very strong, though. Should you watch it? Yep, book your trip to Brazil.
Jack,
Hello, big boy. I want to look at your willy.
So there you have it. 1985 has been kicked off, and my favorite of this block, very clearly, very obviously, Brazil. This was a decent batch of movies, but not particularly a great one. But let me know which of these is your favorite. Let me know which of these you've seen, which of these you would now like to see. I want to hear that in the comments below. Also, if you enjoy this video, hit the like button. If you like what you see on the channel and you like the project, hit the subscribe button and get the bell to get notified when new videos go up. Also, check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines and help support this channel and keep it going. And yeah, 1985 is off to a slightly less popular start with smaller movies, but trust me, there's some much bigger ones coming very soon right here on the 80s Project.